surprised, Lloyd, that Joey Saputo didn't go out and try and replace, Marco Di Vaio early on with a player or two. Your thoughts?
Well, I do know firsthand that they've been trying behind the scenes to add a couple attacking pieces to the roster. I mean, last year at the end of the season, it was quite clear that this team was not good enough at that current juncture, and in the way they were to come into this season the very same, which is more or less what they did. I mean, they added Santiago Gonzalez, which by all accounts, I think he's played about 30 minutes over 3 games, so that just tells you what they think of him, and clearly the signing that they thought he was going to be, it so far has not turned out to be that. But I do know that they were trying to add some pieces. Now they're trying to, there's talk of bringing in the Argentinian
Ignacio Piatti.
Ignacio Piatti. He's been a name that's actually been in discussion, not just this year, but prior to this. And so, again, he's just one of the players. They've got a strong connection in Argentina. So there are a number of players that they've been looking at. It just hasn't worked out. I mean, for some reason, whether it's connections, whether it's guys who still want to come to Canada, whatever it is, it's been very difficult for them to add on. But I do know that they have tried to strengthen the roster with personnel, albeit though that they do believe in the guys that they have, which I've got my issues with that. But they do believe in those guys. But in addition to that, they did try to add pieces to strengthen the roster.
And I'm like you, Lloyd. I've got some of the issues with some of the guys they've got on the roster right now. And I'm quite disappointed in Frank Lopez in a sense that he's been around the league a number of years. He knows what it takes to win in MLS. He knows the North American player, more so the U.S. player. Why didn't he go out and try to plug some of the holes like DC United did through the waiver draft?
Well, you know what that's a good question, and Frank does know the league. And I think if you're a Montreal fan, one of the things you can, kind of take solace in is that Frank has a track record of improving things when they don't go well. He did it last year in Chicago. I mean, I think they won, if memory serves me, I think they won twice in maybe their first 12 games, 11 or 12 games. So, and then he turned it around and they missed the playoffs on goal difference. Ironically, Montreal made it over them. So he does have a history of turning things around. I just tend to think that when he came in here, he was convinced by Nick DeSantis, the sporting director, that they've got a good enough squad. It was their second-year team. They made the playoffs, and so they expect guys to step up. And it's not unrealistic an expectation for guys to now. It's a year further on. You've got to improve. You've got to bring a little bit more to the table. Each year. And I think, case in point, Andrew Wenger, for example, it's year 3 now, and you're the first draft pick a couple years ago. But you got to make this thing work now. It's no longer good enough that your effort is the only thing that's out there on a daily basis. That's fantastic, but you've got to now start finding the back of the net, because that's why you were drafted to play this position, and that's why you're starting so many games. And essentially, the heir apparent, shall we say, or supposed heir apparent to Marco Di Vaio. So there's a couple of things when you look at that. I mean, they expect the younger guys to evolve a little bit more. They expect the returning veterans to deliver a little bit more to the table. And then, obviously they hope that would add things up. But I think Lopez will certainly know that this team is not good enough after seeing them over the time that he has. Because I noticed something in preseason. There were a lot of changes from what transpired in preseason as far as how they lined up, specifically in the back line, to how they line up on the first day of the season.
I'm going to give you a name, Lloyd, and you keep this name in the bank, in your mind for the next few weeks. If Kyle Becker doesn't get the playing time here in Toronto, I will tell you one thing. I will not be surprised if he makes his way out to Montreal somehow, some way. This kid would be a valuable piece to that team in that midfield.
Well, and I think the key thing about Becker is that he's a Canadian, and I go back to last season when Montreal lost 1-0 to Toronto, and Becker, I think that's the best I've seen him play in the final game of the season. And that to me was almost like an audition for the young man to come to Montreal. He's a Canadian, so the other two, Vancouver and Montreal, will certainly have him on the radar. I don't mind him as a player. I think the only thing with Becker, though, is that you have to consider what's already here in Montreal. And Montreal has developed some players through the youth academy that play that very same position. As a matter of fact, Andre Lefebvre, who's appointed now as a center half, he's actually a midfielder of Becker's caliber, but he's not been deployed there since he's joined the ranks, since he's moved up from the academy. So there are a number of players here that kind of fit that mold. The thing with Becker is he needs playing time because, obviously he's come out of the draft with high expectations. Toronto, it's probably not the right setup for him to have fallen into as far as developing as a player because there's so much expected of him coming out of college, maybe more so than need be. To shoulder a load in the ink, and so I think his development is kind of stalled. So he needs to play. If he comes to Montreal, you're talking about Patrice Bernier, the captain. You're talking about Hernan Bernardello, the DP. And so he's going to be back on the bench again. So right now he's got to find a situation where he could jump into a lineup and get some minutes. But I like Carl Becker. He showed me enough anyway the last game of the season, last season.
Lloyd, let's break down some of the other interesting matchups on the weekend. DC United against Chicago Fire, Frank's old club. And I got firsthand to see DC United here on the weekend and spoke to their assistant coach, Enzo Concina, who is a friend. And the field was absolutely horrible. We understand that. But I expected more from DC. This is a team that is full of MLS veterans with Bobby Boswell, Eddie Johnson making the big bucks, Davey Arnaud, who you know, Espinola. It goes on and on. To me, I saw too many mistakes early on, and I fear if this team goes down against Chicago Fire, that this could be real ugly.
Well, and I think you're spot on. I mean, you've knocked it right on the head there. They've got enough guys, I think, to turn the page, but you also have to understand that they've made some wholesale changes. I don't think the philosophy has changed. Mike McGee's is trying to carry on the kind of tradition he's trying to build the last several years, but it just hasn't really taken mold yet. Take you back to even Toronto FC. I think, when you make wholesale changes, one of the key things that you have to have in those changes are really significantly influential players. And I think that's the case with Toronto right now. They've got a guy that can score goals at will in Jermaine Defoe. And they've got a guy that plays in midfield, Michael Bradley, who's a workhorse. But if he doesn't have Jermaine Defoe, maybe his work kind of goes, unnoticed in some way, shape, or form because the end product is not there. And so you kind of look at, when you add those things up, you realize that it's going to take a minute, really, for DC to kind of get going because they've got the quality players. And I think once you realize what MLS is all about, you realize that it's just a matter of 2-3 players just delivering the goods, amongst the other guys, obviously, that have to carry, their burden as well. But you need 3-4 guys that you expect a lot from, and to kind of carry the load. And I don't expect for them to kind of keep this type of play that's not positive going. I do expect things to turn around for them because they have added enough pieces.
Let's look at the Whitecaps taking on the Houston Dynamo. Year in and year out, one of the best coached teams with Dominic Kinnear at the helm. I said it, Lloyd. If Benito Floro wasn't Canada's men's national team head coach, I would not for 1 second hesitate to contact Dominic Kinnear to become Canada's national team coach. This guy, year in and year out, he just gets this team in gear and getting them not only into the playoffs, but all the way to the final. Whitecaps under Carl Robinson starting out quite well. Now, tomorrow, they'll be without Nigel Reo-Coker. What a huge injury to the head he sustained. Walking over, I believe, a bike rack, Lloyd, of all things.
So I hear. I mean, it's quite ironic that, he doesn't get hurt on the pitch, but off the pitch is where he gets hurt. And yeah. I can't tell you, as a manager, Carl Robinson must have shook his head nonstop in total disbelief. It's a big loss without him in there, but I tell you what, and this is why I've been saying since the start of the season, since the first 30 minutes of seeing Vancouver play, that I really like what Carl Robinson has built there. Gershon Kofi will step in place of Nigel Reo-Coker, expectedly anyway, and he, for me, is a terrific player. And this is going to be his first start in the young season. But I don't think you've missed a beat with Kofi coming in place of Reo-Coker over there in Vancouver. And so it's just one example of why I really like this Vancouver side. The depth for me is terrific. I think the new players that Carl Robinson has added, Pedro Morales from Chile, Sebastian Fernandez from Uruguay. I think these are terrific players. I've seen a change in Darren Mattox. Looks a lot more responsible these days. But they're going against a side that's well coached, as you said. I mean, well, first of all, you mentioned the national team, Dominic Kinnear taking over the national team. Well, that's if he would have wanted it. You don't have a big lineup of coaches trying to coach the Canadian team, by the way.
No, I hear you, Lloyd, but in all honesty, I considered if Bruce Arena didn't want the job, next in line for me would have been obviously Bob Bradley if he didn't want it, and then Dominic Kinnear.
Well, Kinnear, I tell you what he's done in Houston is that he's one of those guys, a little bit like Robinson has displayed so far, is that he gets the best out of what he has. If you look at his roster, there's a lot of role players. These aren't all-star guys. It's not 6 guys on the 11 that are all-stars. It's just role players that know their role. He's got a philosophy in that club that he's instilled in a lot of these players, and he knows the characteristics of players that he wants to suit that style. Don't take for granted as well, their field is slightly smaller than most fields around Major League Soccer. He puts that to good use, pressing teams high, winning the ball quickly, and play off the break at speed. Dominic Kinnear is a master of MLS in kind of utilizing what he has at his disposal and the strengths, and it's why he continues to do that. I mean, he's reluctant to sign designated players because he realized he doesn't need it because he's got a formula that works for him.
You're bang on, and that's why guys like Warren Creavalle and Corey Ash, who have been on my show, talk so highly of Coach Kinnear, because these two guys were given the opportunity. They were given the confidence in head coach Kinnear to start and to play. And Warren Creavalle last year in the playoffs and Corey Ash were outstanding.
And by the way, Corey Ash, a terrific player. Just recently Montreal's game plan. I wouldn't say circled around Corey Ash, but certainly there. Corey Ash being on the right side along with Brad Davis. Part of the plan, Columbus's game plan, was to start Colin Warner on that side to alleviate that problem that Houston presents. He's up and down. He's very busy. And again, he's just one of those players. He's not a superstar player, but you want a player that gets up and down with great volume, defensively sound and offensively viable, and gives you something throughout the pitch for 90 minutes where you're talking about, that young man on the flank. And then he couples with Brad Davis, and away you go. You've got a dynamic outside left side attack with Corey Ash and Brad Davis, and that's just how Dominic Kinnear kind of combines his players, strength with strength, and he's got a very balanced side that way. But yeah, it's those guys will speak highly of him because, like I said, like Carl Robinson in Vancouver, what we've seen so far is that he's been able to get the best out of his players.
Just before we close it out, Lloyd, I can't let you go without getting your thoughts on the game tomorrow, TFC and Real Salt Lake. I think this will be a very good test early on for TFC. Kyle Beckerman and Michael Bradley, the storyline there. Jurgen Klinsmann will be in the stands. But to me, I think Real Salt Lake is going to miss João Plata being out of the lineup. And then I think TFC is going to have to really adjust to the crowd and the different field that they're going to be playing against in Real Salt Lake.
And the funny thing about João Plata as well is that it's probably a testament to the manager as well, to see him as a player that can serve value in the middle of the pitch. When he was at Toronto, he was mostly a flank player, stayed on the byline, and just ran up and down the flanks, basically cut in from time to time. But now he's used a little bit more central in Salt Lake, and you know what that means. He's causing a whole sorts of problems for center halves around the league who will have no chance of keeping up with his pace over 5 to 10 yards. And it's unfortunate they'll lose him, but they've got quality. Alvaro Saborio's in there, Luke Mulholland. But Beckerman, for me, is one of the generals of this league. He reminds me so much of Andre Pirlo, just how he pulls the plugs out of midfield. He's a little bit different player from Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley is really a workhorse. He's just tenacious in midfield and winning balls. I think Beckerman is a little bit more polished in that regard, and I think he thinks a little bit more from an offensive standpoint. I'm seeing that in Bradley's changed his game to think a lot more offensive, whereas I think that's kind of always been Beckerman's game, although he sees himself as an all-rounder who just kind of sits box to box and floats in the box, and floats in the attacking third when need be. But that's going to be a fantastic matchup to watch. Now, do keep in mind, though, that the only time they're going to really go head-to-head is unless each one of them jumps into the attack a little bit higher up, because both of them do tend to sit naturally kind of just in the holes, as always, kind of that recovery man in midfield. So they may never even touch each other, depending on on the framework of the game and how it plays out.